All right, so today we're going to learn about result clauses, a new usage of the subjunctive in Latin. And to begin, let's just start by diving into one of the sentences and see if we can untangle it. My hint as you try to translate this is that I've used the setup of a popular joke in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so maybe that will give you a sense of how to translate it. Pause the video now because I'm about to tell you the answer. Alrighty, so hopefully you've worked on it. Maybe you've been able to figure it out. Let's walk through how we translate this. First off, we see tua mater. That is our nominative subject. And tam foida est, so we know it's your mother is. Est is the verb, main verb. Tam foida, so ugly. Foida is in the predicate position. And yes, your mama's so ugly. This is a your mama joke in Latin. The best kind of your mama joke, in my opinion. Your mother is so ugly, that, with the implication being, as a result, what's the result of your mother's being so ugly? Your mother is so ugly that the Greeks, the Graiki, is in the nominative in the subordinate clause. The Graiki, and what verb are they doing? The dent, which is the subjunctive of do, dari, dedi, datus. That the Greeks might give Aeam, her direct object, to the Trojans. So your mama's so ugly that the Greeks might give her to the Trojans, which, for those of us who know the story of the Iliad or the Odyssey, is essentially she's the opposite of Helen, who the Greeks, the face that launched 1,000 ships. Gotta love good literary classical allusions in your mama jokes. All right, and that's a good way to remember how result clauses work, because essentially all your mama jokes are result clauses. All result clauses are not your mama jokes. So let's dive into some other examples of result clauses now. Here's the big deal. The result clause is going to express the result of the main clause action. So it's going to tell us what happened as a result of the main clause. In order to recognize it, it's going to be introduced by the subordinating conjunction ut, and it's usually going to have an adverb, one of ita, seek, tam, or the adjective tantus in the main clause. So you're going to be so beautiful, or the size of the earth is so large that the result is that this Latin is so great, tantus, right? Tanta lingua latina est, that as a result, what? And so that's all going to be in the main clause, ita, seek, tam, or tantus, and then you're going to have ut, and then you're going to have whatever the result of that main clause is. And then the other big way to recognize result clauses and differentiate it from other ut subjunctive usages is that in the negative, it's going to have non, nihil, or nemo plus ut. You're not going to change ut to ne. All right? And for the translation, how am I going to translate the subjunctive in a result clause? Good news. You're just going to translate it as though it was the same tense in the indicative. So you don't have to do any crazy things like in order to, so that might, like you have to do with purpose clauses, or with indirect commands where we have to remember to translate the verb as an infinitive. We're just going to translate the verb exactly how it looks in that tense, as though the verb was indicative rather than subjunctive. A lot of abstract stuff there, so let's try and get into some more specifics. But before we do that, let's just do a little retrieval practice. I may have given this away, but what are the other subjunctive usages that are introduced by ut that we've learned so far? I should say indirect command, my bad. Yep. Indirect command and purpose clauses. Those are the two that we see, a main clause and an ut, and then it might be an indirect command, it might be a purpose clause, or now it might be a result clause. And just some reminders for how to distinguish these. If the main clause, it has a verb of ordering, telling, or asking. I ask you to do something. I order you to do something. I beg you to do something. That's probably going to be a sign that the ut clause is an indirect command. And it also uses ut gets replaced by ne if we want to make the command negative. I beg you not to do something. We use ne. And then purpose clauses are if you see ut or ne, and then you don't see any of the other indicators. So you don't see a verb of ordering, telling, or asking, so you know it's not an indirect command. And you don't see tom, seek, ita, or tantus, so you know it's not a result clause, or it's probably not a result clause. So indirect command you can usually tell apart pretty clearly by the main clause, but let's talk a little bit more about the difference between purpose and result, which can get a little bit mixed up. And the best way to ask yourself, particularly when you're translating English to Latin, about whether you should be using purpose clause rules or result clause rules, is that purpose clauses answer the question why regarding the main action. Why did the main action occur? Whereas the result clause tells you what happened because of the main action. So a result clause answers what happened, a purpose clause answers why. So keeping that in mind, let's read sentences 1 through 4 now. Pause it and see if you can determine whether each one of these is either a purpose clause or a result clause. And if you pause, I'm about to tell you the answer. All right, so number 1 is a result clause. What was the result of the men working so hard? Well, the house was built. That was the result of it. And number 2, the answer is it is a purpose clause because it's telling you why did they carry buckets to the well? Well, they carried buckets to the well for the purpose of bringing back water to the house. Number 3, Claudius spoke in such a way that the senators could not reject his proposal. It's answering the question, what happened? What was the result of Claudius speaking in such a way? Well, the result was that the senators could not reject his proposal. So that result clause from that to proposal. And then lastly, Vespasian scrimped and saved in order to replenish the empty imperial treasury. Emperor Vespasian, who we'll hopefully hear a presentation on in a little bit. And he scrimped and saved. The answer is asking us why, right? And so the answer is that he did it in order to replenish the imperial treasury. So it's answering the question why. So that is going to be a purpose clause. As you look at these, I can understand if it seems a little bit confusing that you can kind of see, well, they seem to be doing the same thing. So to give you one that's just a little bit more clear, let's do one where the main clause action is more negative, or the result is negative. It can sometimes be clear that it's not purpose. An example is, I worked so hard that I collapsed. Clearly the purpose of working so hard was not to collapse. The collapsing was a result of the work. And so that maybe shows you a little bit more clearly the difference between purpose and result. And finally, let's just look at some Latin examples. And so if you want to pause the video now, that's a great idea, to try and work on these sentences on your own, and then you can hear me walk through the answers. All right, so you haven't paused the video, I'm beginning now. Hic liber tam difficulus mihi est visus. Ut tells us we're starting a new clause, so we're just pause here. Hic liber is our subject, nominative subject. This book, est visus, seemed, video in the passive, right? This book seemed to me, mihi, tam difficulus, so difficult. Ut, that, non possum, and it's possum posse potui, so that's the infinitive plus an ending, imperfect subjunctive, that I was not able to read it, legere am. And you notice that it's an ut non negative construction, so you know it can't be indirect command or purpose. Plus you also see tam, another indicator. You know this is a result clause, which is why I translated it as that I was not able to read it, because we know that we can translate a subjunctive in a result clause in the tense that it is. So this is an imperfect subjunctive, so I'm going to translate it as though it's imperfect indicative. Line number 2. Tera, nominative, is Tom Ingains is so huge, that it is not able, non-pulsate, to be seen, conspici, passive infinitive, present active passive infinitive, because it's conspicio, conspicere, third conjugation, weak E runs away, so that it is not able to be seen, the whole thing is not able to be seen by us, tota. So tota referring back to Terra. So that the whole earth implied is not able to be seen by us. And once again, we see Tom here, and we see non-negative, so we know it has to be a result clause. So we know we can translate possit as the subjunctive, as just the present tense indicative, because it's the present tense subjunctive here, and we know that's the translation rule for result clauses. All right, last one. Copernicus, subject, ad nos scribit, he writes to us, so that we might understand, we may understand, intellegamos, the earth and stars, terram et stellas, accusative direct objects. You notice here that I translated this not as just that, but as so that, and I translated the subjunctive as we might, rather than just translating it in the indicative, because this is not a result clause. There's no tam ita, seek, or tantus in the main clause, and the answer is not telling us the result of Copernicus writing to us, it's telling us the purpose. It's not telling us what happened, it's telling us why he chose to write to us. And it's in order that, because he wanted us to understand the earth and the stars. Okay? All right, I hope this helps, and I'll see you in class so that we can tidy up any misunderstandings.